Welcome to Walking in His Footsteps, a podcast where we dive into the life of Jesus, his impact on the world, and how his teachings can guide us today. I'm your host, Emma Thompson, and I'm thrilled to have you with us. Today, we're exploring how Jesus' life offers lessons for our personal and professional lives, and how we can show compassion to those in need. Joining me is Dr. Michael Carter, a biblical scholar and professor of theology at St. Mary's University. Dr. Carter, thanks so much for being here.
Emma, it's a joy to be here. I'm excited to talk about Jesus' life and how his teachings still resonate so powerfully today.
Oh, I'm pumped for this. Let's dive right in. So just to start us off, maybe paint a quick picture for us. Who was Jesus fundamentally, and why was his life so significant, not just back then, but why does it still matter so much now?
Well, fundamentally, we're talking about a Jewish man, a carpenter from Nazareth. This is first century Judea under Roman occupation, which is important context.
Right.
He started his public ministry around age 30. And his focus, teaching about the kingdom of God. But it wasn't just abstract theology.
It was practical.
Very practical. He healed people who were sick, brought comfort to those suffering, and he called people to love one another. But the message itself,
Yeah.
it was pretty radical for its time.
How so? What made it radical?
Think about it. Love your enemies.
Yeah.
Care for the poor, the outcasts. Forgive. Well, forgive endlessly. These weren't exactly mainstream ideas in that, or even our society.
That's true. It still feels countercultural today.
It really does.
Yeah.
And crucially, he didn't just teach these things. He actually lived them out. That authenticity, I think, was key.
So people saw him doing what he was preaching.
Exactly. People were drawn to him because he genuinely saw them. The people's society usually ignored the outcasts, the broken, the ones considered unimportant. He gave them dignity.
He saw their value.
Precisely. And ultimately, his life, his death, and the resurrection. That became the bedrock of Christianity. And, his teachings, that way of living, billions of people today are still trying to figure out how to live according to that example, still shaping lives.
That idea of seeing people is powerful. Can you share maybe a couple of stories from the Bible that really show how Jesus' love actually, transforms someone's life? Concrete examples.
Oh, absolutely. There are so many, but two really stand out, I think. First, there's Zacchaeus. You find his story in Luke chapter 19.
Zacchaeus, he was the tax collector, right?
That's him. A chief tax collector, actually, which meant he was probably wealthy, but also deeply hated. Tax collectors back then were often seen as traitors, working for the Romans, and notorious for cheating their own people.
So definitely an outcast.
Definitely. And Jesus comes into town, Jericho. Zacchaeus is short, so he climbs a tree just to get a glimpse of Jesus over the crowd. And Jesus, he stops, looks up, and basically invites himself over to Zacchaeus' house for dinner.
Just like that. No lecture first.
No lecture, no condemnation, just an invitation, an act of sheer acceptance. And this completely undoes Zacchaeus. Right there, he stands up and declares he'll give half his possessions to the poor and pay back anyone he's cheated 4 times over.
Wow. So it wasn't being shamed into it, but being accepted that caused the change.
Exactly. Jesus' love, his willingness to associate with him, changed Zacchaeus' heart. It wasn't just about modifying behavior. It was a deep internal transformation.
That's incredible. What's the other story you mentioned?
The other one is the woman at the well from John chapter 4. This is another powerful encounter. She was a Samaritan woman.
And Jews and Samaritans didn't mix, right?
Not at all. There was deep hostility there. Plus, her personal life was complicated. The text suggests she was likely ostracized even within her own community. Jesus meets her at a well, initiates a conversation, breaking multiple social taboos right there, talking to a Samaritan, a woman alone in public.
He just ignored the social rules.
Completely. He talks with her, shows he knows her story without judgment, and offers her living water, which is really about offering her a new kind of life, a spiritual life, with real purpose and dignity.
And what happened to her?
She's transformed. She goes from being this marginalized figure, likely avoiding people, to running back to her village and telling everyone about Jesus.
Yeah.
She becomes an evangelist, really.
So in both cases, it was about seeing the person, offering dignity, and that led to this huge change.
Yes. Giving people dignity and hope, seeing their inherent worth.
Yeah.
That seems to be the catalyst for profound transformation in these stories.
That really makes you think about our own relationships. How can we, just ordinary people, bring that kind of compassion into our daily lives? At home, with friends, even maybe with strangers?
That's the key question, isn't it? And I think it starts simply, though it's not always easy. It begins with trying to see people the way Jesus did, with compassion, trying to look past labels or our own prejudices.
Seeing the person behind the situation.
Exactly. Remember Matthew 22.39, love your neighbor as yourself. The crucial part there is understanding who neighbor is. In Jesus' context, it wasn't just the person next door.
It was broader than that.
Much broader. It meant anyone you encountered, anyone in your path, especially someone in need, even an enemy.
Okay, so how does that look practically? At home, for instance.
Well, at home, it might mean really listening to your family,
Mm.
putting down the phone, making eye contact, hearing what's behind the words, even when you're tired or stressed.
Being truly present.
Yes. And with friends. It's about showing up during the hard times, not just the fun times. Being a consistent, supportive presence when they're struggling.
That makes sense. Any examples maybe of how this plays out with, say, neighbors or people we meet casually?
Sure. Think about maybe an elderly neighbor who lives alone. Like there's this example of a woman named Sarah. She noticed her neighbor, a widow, seemed to be struggling to carry her groceries one day.
Okay.
Instead of just a quick wave, Sarah started intentionally checking in on her each week, sometimes bringing meals, sometimes just chatting for a bit. It wasn't a huge dramatic gesture. It was small, consistent, intentional acts of care born out of seeing a need. That's loving your neighbor.
It's about noticing and then choosing to act, even in small ways.
Precisely. Small, intentional choices inspired by that model of compassion.
Let's shift a bit to the workplace. That can be a tough environment, sometimes competitive, maybe even cutthroat. How do Jesus's teachings, especially about humility, apply there? Can you really practice servant leadership at work?
It's definitely a challenge, but yes, absolutely possible, and I'd argue needed. One of the most striking examples is in John chapter 13.
What happens there?
Jesus washes his disciples' feet. Now, you have to understand, this was a job reserved for the lowest servant in the household. It was dirty, humbling work. And here's Jesus, their leader, their teacher, doing it.
Taking on the role of a servant.
Exactly. And then he tells them basically, I've given you an example. You should do as I have done for you. He completely flips the script on leadership. It's not about power over others, but about using your position, whatever it is, to serve others.
So servant leadership isn't just a nice idea, it's modeled directly by him.
Directly. And it applies whether you're the CEO or just starting out. It's about humility. There was an example of a CEO, Mark, who made it a point to regularly work shifts alongside his frontline retail staff.
Really? What was the point of that?
To understand their reality, their challenges firsthand. He listened to them, genuinely valued their input, gave them credit. He fostered a culture where people felt seen and valued, not just like cogs in a machine. That's servant leadership.
That's a great example. But what if you don't have that kind of authority? Can you still practice this?
Oh, absolutely. You don't need a title to serve. You can serve by helping a coworker who's struggling with a project, offering encouragement, being honest and ethical even when it's difficult, maybe mentoring someone newer. It's about putting others' needs alongside your own ambitions, fostering collaboration instead of just competition.
So it's a mindset, an approach, more than just a position.
Yes, it's about how you interact with and value the people around you every day.
That leads naturally, I think, to another core part of Jesus's message.
Yeah.
Caring for the marginalized, the poor, the sick. He seemed to have a special heart for them.
He absolutely did. It wasn't just a side note. It was central. Think about Matthew 25, verse 40. That's a powerhouse statement.
Remind us what it says.
Jesus says, truly, I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. He directly equates serving people in need, the hungry, the thirsty, the stranger, the naked, the sick, the prisoner, with serving God himself.
So caring for the vulnerable isn't just a nice thing to do, it's actually encountering God.
That's the implication. It's a deeply spiritual act. It's fundamental to faith in action. He didn't just talk about charity. He lived a life of radical compassion, reaching out to those society pushed aside.
How do we translate that into our world today? It feels like the needs are so vast.
They are vast, but the principle remains the same. It can look like volunteering at a food bank or a homeless shelter, donating clothes or resources, visiting someone who's sick or lonely. But it can also mean advocating for justice, working for systemic changes that address the root causes of poverty or marginalization.
So direct help and working for bigger change.
Both are important. I know someone, Lisa, who felt called to address homelessness in her community. She started a program through her church offering job training and support.
That sounds challenging.
Incredibly challenging. Lots of hard work, setbacks. But she often said that seeing the resilience and potential in the people she was helping, seeing them find hope again, It completely transformed her own faith. She felt she was meeting Jesus in them, just like Matthew 25 says.
That's powerful. But it also brings up that feeling many of us have, wanting to help but feeling overwhelmed. Like, I don't have enough time or I don't have enough money. What difference can I really make? The scale of need seems paralyzing sometimes.
That's such a common and understandable feeling. It's easy to look at the world's problems and just feel small, insufficient. But here's the thing. Jesus never asked any one person to solve everything.
He didn't expect us to fix the whole world single-handedly.
No. He asked us to be faithful with what we do have, however little it might seem. There's that story in Luke 21 about the poor widow at the temple.
The one who gave the 2 small coins.
That's the one. While wealthy people were putting in large sums, she puts in 2 tiny copper coins, basically all she had to live on. And Jesus points her out and says she actually gave more than all the others.
Because she gave sacrificially out of her need, not just her excess.
Exactly. It wasn't about the amount. It was about the heart, the willingness to trust. It shows that the value isn't necessarily in the quantity of our contribution, but in the spirit behind it.
So the takeaway is, don't let feeling like you don't have enough stop you from doing something.
Precisely. Start small. Buy that coffee for the person on the street corner. Offer a genuine word of encouragement to someone who looks down. Volunteer an hour if you can't volunteer a whole day. Listen compassionately. These things matter. They create ripples.
Small acts have value.
Immense value. And, if you're feeling overwhelmed or unsure where to start, the Bible encourages us to ask for guidance. James 1.5 promises that God gives wisdom generously if we ask. Pray about it. Ask where you can best use the gifts and resources you do have.
That's really encouraging. Don't get paralyzed. Just start somewhere with the right heart.
That's the essence of it. Be faithful with what's in front of you.
This has been so insightful. Before we wrap up, if there was one core message, one big takeaway you'd want listeners to hold on to from Jesus' life about living out this love every day, what would it be?
I think boiling it all down, it comes back to love in action. That phrase really captures it. Jesus' life wasn't just about nice ideas or warm feelings. It was love embodied.
Love made tangible.
Yes, love for God, certainly, but poured out in tangible love for others, especially those who were hurting or overlooked. He gave that famous new command in John 13.34.
What was that again?
A new command I give you, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. That's the blueprint. It's about loving others with that same kind of sacrificial, compassionate, active love he demonstrated.
As he loved us. That's a high bar.
It is. We'll do it imperfectly, no doubt. But if we genuinely lean into that, if we try, even stumbling along the way, to let that kind of love guide our actions, our relationships, our choices, it changes us.
Right.
And it really does start to change the world around us. One act of love, one person at a time. It's incredibly powerful.
That's beautiful. Dr. Michael Carter, thank you so much for this conversation. I'm already thinking about how to live this out in my own life, and I bet our listeners are too. Folks, if you enjoyed this episode, share it with a friend. And join us next time as we dig deeper into Jesus' parables and what they teach us. Until then, keep walking in his footsteps.